My amateur radio call sign is Whiskey 6 Alpha Hotel. This is WaveTalkers Live, episode number 76. Today we're talking about the lessons learned from Field Day 2023. I'm joined by my esteemed colleagues, Dan, NR6V, and David, W0DHG. And let's get right into today's topic. For that, what we're going to do is first, let's jump over to the slides. And hopefully we can, let me bring the guys down off of screen real quick.
I got it.
And gotcha already. And I'll bring myself back onto screen. And let's jump into today's topic. If you have access to WinLink, go ahead and send us a WinLink check-in. Send it to all three of our call signs. Those are W0DHG, NR6V, W6AH, and our tactical address of WaveTalkers. Be sure to use the standard WinLink check-in form. And in the comments section, let us know what is one lesson learned from your field day experience. Let's go ahead and quickly walk through that process together here on the PC. So here I've got a copy of WinLink open. What we're going to do is we're just going to come up here in the top menu, click on the new message window. When that comes up, you're going to click on select template. The template manager comes up, click the little plus sign next to that, and you're going to come down here to the general form section. Give that general form section a click. I'll move this over so we can see it a little bit better. Come on down here at the bottom, you should find the WinLink check-in.txt file. Go ahead and give that a double click. And if you do, it should open up your web browser of choice. You're going to step through the process of filling out this form now. You're going to come up here in the date and time section. Go ahead and give that a click so that it sets the current date and time based on your computer's settings. We'll go ahead and click OK. For the select status, we'll say this is an exercise. Let us know the band that you're connecting on and the mode that you're sending this in on. I'm going to leave mine set to NA and Telnet, send this in via the internet. Here's the send to. That's where you want to put all of our call signs. Just separate those with the semicolon. Our call signs again are W0DHG, NR6V, W6AH, and our tactical address of WaveTalkers. For call signs of any on-site operators, go ahead and let us know the call signs of any of the operators that are there at your location, your station contact name, and your call sign. Let us know your location. Your latitude and longitude should automatically be filled in for you, either based on the center of your grid square, or if you have a GPS connected, it should have your more precise GPS location information. Here's the comment section. Go ahead and fill that comment section in. That's where you want to let us know what is one lesson learned from your field day experience. Then go ahead and click the submit button. You'll get a couple of pop-ups that'll show up once your browser window goes blank. You can go ahead and close that browser window. All of your data should be entered here into your new message, and you're going to post that to your outbox. And then once you've done that, you can come on over here, open your session, and go ahead and do the send and receive. I'm going to click the start button, and it looks like we have some check-ins that are coming in from all over the world. We'll download these, and later in the show, we will check back on what all of those check-ins look like. We'll bring them up on the map so we can see everybody all over the world where you're checking in from. Before we dive into some reviews of Field Day, because we're going to be talking about what our field day experiences were. We're going to start off with Dan NR6V, but before we do, there is one other thing that we can do inside of WinLink, and this was a really good suggestion. It came in from Stephen, who's here, Kilo 6 Z Juliet Charlie. And they suggested have people send in an after action report. So I'm going to go back over to WinLink here, and with your WinLink, this is something you can do. Go ahead and click the little new message button again. We're going to go back into the templates, back into the standard template section, and if you come down to general forms, there is an after action report form. Go ahead and click on that, give it a double click, and it should bring up this general after action report. You can go ahead and fill this out just the same way that you do the regular WinLink check-in. Just fill in all of the fields. You can work on this while we're going through the rest of the show, and then go ahead and submit that and send it in to us. when you are asked to fill in the location information, just go ahead and put in the to field when you submit the form. Go ahead and send it to all three of us and our tactical call sign as well. So with that, I'm going to jump back out to my regular camera, and we're going to dive into Field Day 2023, talking about the lessons learned today. And we're going to start off with Dan, NR6V. So let me bring Dan up, and won't you take it away for us?
All right, Chris. Well, I participated with one of my groups, the Los Angeles City ACS. We have a sort of a complicated management. We're part of California Department of Emergency Services, but through the city emergency services, but they have us managed by the fire department. So our closest association is with the fire department. And we're the RACES group for the city of Los Angeles. And we did a field day this year as a 4 Alpha station. And we did it from Fire Station 109, which is an old mountain, back when there was a separate mountain fire department. This was a location where they kept their bulldozers, and they had a fire station there, and they had a helipad up top. And we set up there. Our primary location was up on the old helipad. As typically happens, the neighbors encroached in on the area and complained about the helicopters. Plus, it really is kind of small for the larger helicopters that they're using these days. So we set up on the helipad. Helipad was our primary location. This is an early morning shot. Typically, during the night, the Marine layer will come in, and as you can see, it got a little foggy. The guys that stayed overnight said it actually got pretty chilly overnight. The weather, though, was outstanding. Probably the best we've had. Low 80s during the day, and just really ideal weather. So we'll start with antennas. We had several. You can see in this picture here, we have a 3-band beam antenna, and we had bandpass filters set up so that all 3 bands could operate at the same time. And I don't know that we actually had 3 operating at the same time, but I know we had at least 2. We have 2-meter vertical on the far left there. And in the center, it's kind of hard to see, but it's a 6-meter Moxon. And then there are also several antennas that are VHF station set up for 440. I think he had 6 meters, 10 meters. On the here's a closer picture of the 2-meter antenna, the Moxon, and then in the center there is our Arden mesh, that's part of our grant that we got for developing a notification system independent of everything else, a notification system for Mandeville Canyon, which is a very high fire risk area. It's a 5-mile deep canyon, one way in and out, and very narrow. So we're doing that system, and we were connected into that system. We could make phone calls and bring up inquiries from our server that runs on that station. And that's our new communications trailer. This is only our second time out with the trailer. We brought it out for Fire Service Day, but this is the first time we've really operated out of that trailer. I've got another picture of that here later. Then we've got the 40-meter dipole that's up in the dirt area adjacent to the helipad. And then this is a stock photo, but we experimented with a brand new antenna we got. This is called a Wolf. It's a 2 meter to 30 or 2 megahertz to 30 megahertz folded dipole antenna. And the unique thing about this is that it's fully resonant on all the bands in that frequency range. It's not a great antenna on any of those bands, but it's an adequate antenna. And it's designed for radios with automatic link establishment, where they switch bands too fast for even an automatic tuner to work. So I was on that antenna for FT8, and it worked pretty well. I had good luck on 40 meters, on 20 meters, and also 15 meters I ran on that, and it did very well. We also had an 80-meter dipole down below that we didn't get pictures of. So our VHF station, Gary here is operating that. He operated 220, 440, 6 meters, and 1.2 gigahertz. He also operated some 2 meters from inside the trailer. And he actually gets the extra points for putting in extra effort, because he stayed over Friday night to watch our equipment that we had brought in on Friday, and then he worked through Saturday night. So he put in quite the effort for us. And then in the comms trailer for this, we had 2 meters. We had an HF station for phone, and we had the Arden mesh, as I mentioned earlier. Our CW station, there's Marty Wall working that. This area and one other you'll see are kind of flat terraced spots along the road up to the helipad. And we found those work very well for us because they offered quite a bit of shade and nice flat areas to operate from. So Marty worked CW, very successful on 40 and 80. And I'm not sure if he went anywhere else. He probably did, but he was very active, and he worked through the night as well. The other station that was on the terrace above where Marty was just worked phone, and they worked 10, 15, 20, and 40 meters as well. So we were pretty well covered. Here I am down below working FT8. This is where my lesson learned, or one of them is, David in his talk the last couple of weeks talked a lot about getting your equipment out, setting it up ahead of time so there are no surprises when you arrive. Well, I spent Friday getting ready because I'd been really busy all week and didn't get to it, and I paid the price for it because I showed up Saturday. Everything worked as it did Friday, but where I set it up on Friday, I didn't have an HF antenna, so I didn't get to try push to talk. And sure enough, push to talk didn't work for me. And it took me close to an hour to get figured out why push to talk wouldn't work. And I did finally get that solved, basically because of WinLink. I couldn't get the FT8 to work, so I said, well, let's go try WinLink. And I was able to go through and figure out the setting that I had wrong via WinLink, and then went back to FT8 and it worked fine. I also had some trouble with our logging software. The WSJTX software will automatically log for you into several programs. We were using N3FJP, and it just wouldn't do it. So we kept a paper log for our first 20 or 25 contacts. Once I figured out what was wrong and got it fixed, we went back during quieter periods and added those into the log, primarily so we'd know when we had duplicates, which that was a very helpful feature of that. Here's some photos, just randomly photos that were taken. Again, Gary up on the VHF station. This is Ralph working the CW station. I think when Marty was taking a break. You can see the 2 terraced stations in the center here. See how those work. And then the upper right, that is inside our comms trailer. That's where Bill worked HF phone. And then down in the lower right, Al's taken a shot at the VHF station there. So the results, we did really, really well. We were extremely pleased. Over the period of 24 hours, we had at least 18 of our members participated. We had extremely good turnout, both for setup and teardown. I think we got torn down and out of there in less than an hour and a half. We had some LAFD. We had a battalion chief and a couple of captains showed up. We had some community members. Christy, one of our members, is also a neighborhood council member from Sherman Oaks, and she had promoted the event in that group, and we had a number of people showed up just to see what it was all about. The thing we're most proud of, we worked all 50 states. We thought we missed Alaska, but when I went back through and sent Marty, who was compiling it all, I sent him my full printout of my log. We realized that I did make an Alaska contact. So we had all 50 states. We had all ARRL sections, which we were quite pleased with. We had, I believe, 970 contacts total, and that was about a 50% increase from last year. And most importantly, we all had fun, and nobody got hurt. In that area we're at, there are some gotchas, and we have to be careful. We've had rattlesnakes in the past, a lot of places where you could twist an ankle or whatever, particularly in the dark. But we've learned from previous years, and we were careful. And as far as I know, we had no injuries. So, that's it for me. The biggest thing, the biggest takeaway is exactly what David said. Get your stuff out, get it working. But if you have a problem, and you probably are going to have something go wrong, just work the problem. Go through your settings, figure it out. Most problems are solvable. And if you have enough stuff with you, you should be able to solve it, as we were. And it turned out it was a great field day. We love the location up there. It's a fairly electronically quiet area for us. And once we figured out how to get the antennas spaced, got those bandpass filters in there. We did have an issue when I was working FT8 on 20 meters. I was wiping out everybody else on 20 meters, which is why I didn't have very many 20-meter contacts. I was able to go to 15 meters and 40 meters and work that, and pretty much had constant contacts. I think I ended up with 86 FT8 contacts, and I did not stay the night. I worked Saturday most of the day, and I worked about, I don't know, maybe an hour on Sunday. And so I was pleased with those results. So that's it. I'll send it back to Chris.
Hey, Dan, you want to jump back to the slide? I love that first antenna image that you had with the
in the dark.
In the dark. It was a really great image. Somebody had asked, what were the antennas again that you used? I wanted to quickly jump back to that slide, and then also that other the all band antenna as well.
Okay, so the beam, I don't know the manufacturer of the beam, but you can see there are traps here on the elements, and it's a 3-band 10, 15, 20, I believe, and because we were using bandpass filters, we could use those simultaneously. Then we've got the 2-meter vertical here on the left. The right is a Moxon for 6 meters. And I'm not sure exactly what Gary had. He was working 440 and 1.2 gig, but I'm not sure exactly what those antennas are specifically. I like that shot too.
It's a beautiful shot. It's a great image.
Al Wrights took that, and the way he got the lighting to bounce off the antenna and all that. You even see the stars. It was That was obviously before the fog came in, but
that's really great. And then go forward a couple of images to that other vertical that you guys worked, the all band.
Oh, okay.
That thing. What was that again?
It's called a wolf antenna, and it is $2,800.
Woo!
It is expensive, but it's basically like a fan dipole. It's a folded terminated dipole technically. And like I say, the beauty of it is it is resonant on all the bands within the frequency range. I had it tuned up. I actually didn't have to tune it. It without using the tuner, it came up beautifully on all the bands I worked. And it's got the ballon in the center here, and then it's got this tube up top in the center, which I understand is a really big resistor. I don't quite claim to understand how it works, but this is part of a grant we got was to put in these automatic link establishing radios. And to do that, you've got to, whatever bands you choose to work, you've got to have resonant antennas. So we had that for that, and we figured let's bring it out and set it up and give a try. We were less than an ideal setup because of the way we were up in trees, out in the open, like you see in this photo, would probably work better. But on 40 meters, I had it was basically all NVIS. I worked the Western states, pretty much all of them. On 15 meters, I had only the East Coast. I had several Canadian contacts up in Ontario. I had New York, Virginia, most of the southern states, but nothing on the West Coast. So it was kind of interesting. I worked a little bit of 20, as I said. I don't remember where those contacts were, to be honest. And I saw Bill posted in chat. He knows that antenna better than I. He says it's a T2FD. Maybe terminated. Terminated folded dipole. And yes, thank you, FEMA, for that. So I was telling somebody about it. I said, "Oh, it's resonant on all bands," and they said, "Yeah, well, so is my dummy load." So it's it's much better than a dummy load, but certainly not ideal on any given band. You would do much better with a resonant antenna that was for that band only. But that's the way of all multi-band antennas. There is a sacrifice for it. So anyway, Bill and I were talking this morning. We're gonna go to a park and set it up in a park without any obstructions and really play with the antenna and see what we can do. But field day is always a good time to play with new equipment, because there's people out there to contact in all areas, so you really can get an idea of how stuff is working.
That's true. That's a really good point there. Awesome. Thank you very much, Dan. It sounds like you had a wonderful field day experience. Let's go ahead and go over to David, W0DHG, and we will see how your field day experience was.
All right, Chris, happy to share how field day went. Got a long list of lessons learned. I'll show you some pictures, and then we'll talk through some of the again, opportunity options that we'll have for future years to do even better. So let's see, you see my screen all right? Yep, there we go.
Yep.
First lesson learned, pick a great location. Field day, location. This is at a public park up in the mountains. We had a lot of foot traffic. It was a great operating location. While there were some power lines adjacent to some of the stuff, most of it was very quiet. Most of it, we had great views to the east and the north. And as far as a operating location, this is the place. I love this spot. It works really well. Our weather was perfect this weekend, and unfortunately you can't buy the weather, but we were super lucky to have that. Let's see. take a look around at your field day site, stop and smell the roses, as it were. And again, a great location, a great view. It is worthwhile to stop every once in a while in the contest and just take it all in, realize why you're there and realize the beauty of nature around you. I think that's important. Sometimes we get over serious on what we're doing, and there's competition and we've got to do this. And yeah, just stop and smell the roses, take a look around and see what's there. And then again, use your surroundings. This is not our field day site. This is another one of the clubs that I belong to that does their field day in a different park. And they have a lot of awesome assets at that park that we don't have. They have a lot of trees, and they can put antennas up in those trees as long as they're, responsible for what they're doing. And it makes it a lot easier for them to get set up, to get antennas up in the air and have a good operating experience. Look around. I missed one of the pictures here that there was a large set of smoke going up there, and we saw this kind of grow over time, but just be aware of conditions, what's going on around you, and see where there's potential hazards. We were always prepared on this weekend because of the dry brush and the time of year it is, that if something happened, we would need to be prepared to bug out at a moment's notice. And plan your setup time. As we decided how our field day weekend would go, we opted to not set up until Saturday morning. And some of the equipment, some of the gear takes a long time to set up. You can see me there putting together the Buddy Hex, and it is an awesome antenna. It worked really well for us. But there's quite a bit of getting it put together, getting it set up. Think about the people that you have there. Think about how they can be useful. Think about different tasks to have them work on. And make sure you have enough time such that when we get to the beginning of the event, you're ready to go. And be flexible with your setup and your surroundings. On the left there is the picture of the Buddy Hex when we first put it up. And I didn't put it up all of the way. I left a section and a half down. So instead of working the full 7 meters, it was working, a little bit less than that. But as the day went and as the wind picked up, it started tilting over a little bit more than I was comfortable watching and worrying about. And so on the picture on the right there, you can see we dropped it down to about half of the height that it was originally. And it was on the stronger mass sections. And then at that point, they were doubled up because they were sleeved in the tubes. And that pretty much stopped the heavy bend. It didn't affect our operating at all on that antenna. And we probably should have started there when we first set it up, and probably in future years, that's probably about where I'll set it. So again, lessons learned on what'll work and what's safe versus maybe the best operating angle or practice that you can do with some potential risk to your gear and other people that are around. Use the tools that you have. And again, as Dan mentioned, had some challenges with getting prepared ahead of time. I actually had some of those as well myself. I wanted to test everything, and I tested most of this. But you can see people brought lots of gear, lots of stuff, and used what they had to put stuff up in the air and get things deployed just based on the locations they were at. So, know your gear, know how to use it, know how to get it out there and up and operating, and practice ahead of time. And know your antennas. Dan went through his antennas. We had a great array of antennas. You saw the Buddy Hex before. This was the top of the big platform there. That was our UHF VHF station there. And you can see we had, there's a 2-meter Yagi, there's a 6-meter Yagi, and a vertical dual band vertical. There's one more antenna you can't see in the background, which was a 220 vertical as well. So get it set up, get it in a place where you can work it and let it run, and run it as much as you can. Get lots of people and operators in front of those radios. And power is a big deal. We had to adjust a little bit here and there in terms of power based on the space you're allowed. In field day, you're allowed a 1,000-foot circle by which you can operate. And a lot of places that I've been to for field day, they don't take full advantage of all of the space that you can use. And people don't think about like how much space really is that. It's a lot of space. You can really spread out. But when you spread out, Some of the things you have, like your generators, you can't have long enough extension cords to cover that whole area with one generator. So we had to deploy a couple of them. In some spots, we opted to deploy smaller batteries and solar panels. And you use what you got. This is another one of the locations out there. And again, they had generators set up, making sure that they had their fire extinguishers close at hand in case there was any problem that they ran into, and as well as having solar panels for some of their gear and equipment. And people are a huge part of your field day experience. If I can't say enough about the lessons learned about having dedicated people at your field day site that you, as a potential leader, are comfortable with working with the public, to be aware of when you have guests, when you have other people come into your field day site, to be prepared to engage with them, to talk with them, to share the ARRL flyers, to talk about your group and what field day means to your group and why do we do it as a country as a whole. It's very, very important. Getting people in front of the radio, you can see on the left there, that's our UHF VHF station at the top of the tower. And we had a bunch of guests there, and we got those guests on the radio in front of them with the control operator to give them the experience. One of those young ladies is a new ham and actually joined us for our meeting yesterday with our Aries group and will be a regular member. And this was kind of her first exposure to it. And she brought a boyfriend and one of her other friends along so that they could get interested and involved. And they came away with the want to get licensed and get involved in the program. On the picture on the right there, that's James. He's a MRCA police officer. They're actually like state police, and they run the Mountain Conservancy. They're responsible for all the stuff up in the park that we operated from. He was one of our visitors from a served agency, and those are worth bonus points. That's another lesson learned, is know what the points are all about. And I'll show you the format when we get to the end of the presentation here. Know what the possibilities are so that you can plan and review it ahead of time, so that, hey, if I'm going to do this class, or I need to have this served agency person come and visit us, make sure you can prepare for that ahead of time, make the invitations, talk to them, bring the material, so on and so forth. And field day is also about the people in your club, again, the public, working together, making contacts, having fun, because field day should be fun. Like, first and foremost, it's a public service event so that we can really show the public what we do. But second of all, it's about building teams. It's very important to build your team, give people opportunities to get them out there, to work with them, and show off the stuff that we can do. And there are a lot of great examples here of people working together, people working on their radio, on the gear, making friends, working hard. There's Dan there in the one side. There's me up in the other corner. Just making contacts, having fun, and following our hobby and working contacts. More operators there. And the nice thing about field day is lots of people come out and there's lots of gear, and you get to see a lot of gear. Don't be shy as an operator at a field day site to engage with another ham that has equipment that might be equipment that you never touched or play with. And most of them will be happy to say, hey, sit down. I'll show you how this works. I'll show you some of the advantages and disadvantages of certain radios so that you can get an idea. Maybe you haven't bought an HF rig, or maybe you're thinking about wanting a new one. Having an opportunity to see a new, more modern rig can really help drive you in the direction of at least knowing what you like or knowing what you don't like. There's Cameo there on the bottom on the right of our friend Natalie, the Glam Ham on TikTok. She's a great ambassador for our hobby. Lots of videos out there from her. She came and visited us and operated for a while. And we actually did a little bit of training video exercises with her. We figured out some stuff that was working for her, and we figured out some stuff that were creating problems because we don't often have the opportunity to set up like this, ad hoc, and don't always realize that when we plug something into something else and something else, that there may be interference, even from something as simple as charging your cell phone. Because what we found in Natalie's case is she was charging her iPhone off of that battery that was running her ICOM 7300. And even though there was plenty of power along the way, when that cell phone was charging next to the radio, it was actually causing interference. And we did video, and she shared it out on her channel. to show that if you pick it up and take it away, it went away, but you put the phone back down, it brought up the noise floor considerably on that radio. So it was very interesting to see. But again, this is an opportunity to play with things, experiment, and see what works and see what doesn't work. Food is a huge, important part of field day. And if your site didn't have great food or opportunities to have some food or bring something along, you're missing out on something. There's Dan and Martin there enjoying some of my friend Bernard's over frozen ice cream that he likes to bring out to all the events. He packs them in a box with dry ice, and he'll give you an ice cream cone that's probably at about 32 degrees below zero. Almost to the point where you can't really chew it for 15 or 20 minutes, and all you can do is look at it and hope for the best. On the other side there, some folks, we didn't barbecue this year. The location where we're at doesn't allow it, but you can still bring good food. We had some catered El Pollo Loca chicken there. It was great. I always find that eating in the outdoors, like camping, any food is good. And this food was really good because we were hungry. We had been working a long, long day. By the time we got to dinner, we were very happy to have that brought in and enjoyed it quite a bit. So here's some of the lessons that I learned that as I got up there, I remember to myself, one of the huge lessons is anytime I leave my house, before I leave my house to go to an event like this, I need to go to my printer and I need to take all that stack of paper off the printer that I printed leading up to leaving the house and not leave it sitting on the printer. And it is one of those things where I think I need to put a hook on my printer for my car keys. So that's the last thing that I do when I leave. Having the forms that you need to turn in for field day once it's over is a really great prompt for the things that you should be doing at your field day site. On the left there, that's the safety officer checklist. I am the safety officer or designated safety officer for our site and have been for a number of years. So I know most of the things that are on there, but I often forget that I should be pulling it out early on in the event so that I remember all of the things that are on the list they're important, but they're not always obvious. Obviously fuel for your generator properly stored and the fire extinguishers we talked about, having a first aid kit on hand. That was one of the things as I was packing my truck fuller and fuller and fuller and fuller until it was almost full. I thought to myself, I have a first aid kit. It is a rather large backpack. And on these types of events, I have never, ever had to pull it out and use it. And so this year, that was one of the things where I thought, I have some small first aid kits in the back of my truck and other people have first aid kits. So I left it behind. So of course, this year was the first time we had an actual incident. We had somebody actually go down and get a pretty big gash on their head. I was very fortunate that the vehicle that we were operating near where my friend took a fall, they had a first aid kit there. And while the person that owned that first aid kit in the car didn't really know what to do with it, they were able to give it to me and allow me to deploy some first aid and get the bleeding under control and figure out what we needed to do with that operator of ours that took a pretty nasty spill. Having NOAA Weather Service reports and alerts where we are, it's not quite as critical, but some of the locations that some of our friends here joining us for our weekly call may have needed to be a little bit more aware of upcoming weather events or changes in the weather. So that's really an important thing. Always remembering that your tent stakes and your antenna stakes as well need to be properly marked and installed. And when you mark those, a lot of us think, we're marking them in the day. We're going to put caution tape on them or we'll put little flags. I know Chris puts golf balls on the ends of the spikes sticking out of the ground, but sometimes we forget at night it's going to be dark. And I've gone to using paracord for most of my guys that has a strip of reflective tape in it, so that at night when you shine a flashlight on it, it lights up like any warning sign on the street. And then we also use little glow sticks. And at the dollar store or at your local Michael's, you can get a tube of them for like $4 of 100 of them. That your grandkids use as necklaces or wristbands. Well, I take those out and we hang them on the things that are in the path of people once it gets dark. And those usually last most of the night so that you have tripping hazards obviously set up and secured. and on down the list. But having these lists available and pulling them out so that you can look at them will help you remember, hey, I got to do all these things as a safety officer, actually as a member of any of your groups. Knowing what's there and important, it's really key and critical. Now, on the other side of that page, the W1AW Field Day Bulletin Schedule, that's an important list as well. There's 100 points in that. Lots of options on how to copy that long message that they'll send out a number of times throughout the weekend on a lot of different frequencies. If you don't have that list, you're kind of lost. And if you're at a location where you're going to set up your field day and you don't have internet access, it may be difficult if you didn't print that out and bring it along with you to know, when am I supposed to be listening for that bulletin on whichever specific mode that I'm going to use. And our practice at our site in the past, and this is one of the things that we kind of let go of this year, we did not attempt to do this, is we actually try to capture this message 2 or 3 different times in 2 or 3 different modes. When we have a CW operator there, we'll set them on a schedule to catch that. When we have a digital station, we will try to catch it there. When we have a phone station, we'll set up an iPhone on the station next to the radio and put it up at a good volume so that we can record it, because sometimes that message goes in and out. Sometimes you miss part of that message, and it's not a brief message. It's a good long paragraph, and they put a couple words in there to kind of trip you up that are not obvious. So really, really important to have this list. Pay attention to it. Make sure that you can try to capture this if you're looking for those points. On the left here, this is the actual page from the ARRL website. This used to be a form. I didn't find it this year, so instead I just went to the website and printed it out. This is a list of the things that you need to do to submit when you're all done for the Not a Contest that we like to do every year. We call Field Day. And having the list of the things that you need to submit and reviewing it ahead of time and having it available at your site will really help remind you that, hey, I need to know how many people are there and what are our club and class section and what kind of power do we have, and remind us that, hey, if we want our bonus multipliers, we need to be at this certain power level, right? Or that certain power level, as well as all the bonus points that are on there, whether it's media publicity, and you'll need to go out and find that publicity that you got and make a PDF or a document of it and share it with them. Pictures of your public information table, the details again of that formal message that you're going to send to your section manager or section emergency coordinator. All of the other items here, are you using natural power if you're doing solar or wind? Did you get an elected official to come and join you? It reminds you that, hey, you need to get a picture of it, or you need to check the box that you're doing it, or know ahead of time to invite them, because once you're at field day, it's hard to get somebody to drop everything and come up and visit you. Very important things. And as well as the other thing on the next page over, that's a great flyer that the ARL puts out, which is, what is field day? It's a good question and answer. When you have the public come up, it's always good, as I say, to have somebody ready and prepared to talk to them. You're kind of acting PIO for the weekend, to break away and talk to the general public about, what's field day and what's your group about, and more information about, if they're interested, how to join. Some people have a lot of questions, or sometimes you may be too busy to disengage. You may be running a really great pile up and really racking up the points, and you may be like, maybe I don't want to stop right now. Having this flyer available to show them the good information about what goes on with the ARL and why do we do field day can be very helpful. So let me stop my screen share. I got a couple more items that we'll talk about. Made some lists here, made a little note. We did talk about your checklists. Have checklists. Checklists are really important. The gear, the equipment, who's responsible for what, how it's going to get there. And one of the biggest problems that I have that's on my checklist is delegate. Don't have to do it all yourself. If you're part of a group, delegate. Let somebody else bring the food this year. Let somebody else bring that easy up or the extra table, or tell everybody to bring their own chairs, or whatever it happens to be, but ask them to do stuff. We already talked about that first aid kit. Make sure you've got somebody that has a good first aid kit there. I will never leave mine at home again after what we had to deal with. I did have my AED there, and just in case we needed it. and make sure that there are a couple of people trained. If you have one person that's trained in first aid, that's a person that's going to go down and need somebody to help them. So it's important that a couple of people there know what to do and how to do that. And be prepared for changing conditions. You never know what's going to happen during field day. In the first hour or two at our field day site, what we found was all of the 20 and 40 meter traffic at 11 in the morning was all NVIS. It was all local only. Every station that came back to us was an LAX, a Los Angeles County, or an Orange County group. And that's what they were telling us, and that's what we were hearing. And there was a lot of talk back and forth on the bands early on. And then all of a sudden, things opened up. And when it changed, we had kind of moved from, hey, we're making a lot of contests, and it really started. And then we got into the dupes. Everybody that you worked up and down the band was somebody you worked before. So you kind of start slowing down and you get into a different rhythm. But then all of a sudden we started getting stations in Vermont and South Texas and Florida. And you have to be prepared at that moment to switch gears, to get your loggers back, to let everybody know at the site, hey, things are changing now. And while we were really hot for a little while and we started to slow down, and we were now in this slow rhythm where we can stop and sit back and think about what we're going to do and how it's going to go. We're back in the contest now. We're back in making contacts. The bands have changed. They've opened up. And now it's time to really like sit down and work those radios and make those contacts. Be prepared for weather. Again, we had a beautiful weekend. It wasn't too hot. It wasn't too cold. At night at 4 a.m., it was pretty cold. And I was cold even in my good thick sleeping bag because I did sleep a good part of the night. But be prepared for that. There were a couple of our guys that came and only brought a sweatshirt, not a heavy jacket, and they ended up, sleeping in their car, which was not something I would recommend. Sitting in your driver's seat is not a comfortable place. Be prepared for that as well. Bring a sleeping bag, bring a cot, bring a pad to sleep on. Do something other than that. In the past, I will fold the seats out and I'll sleep in the back of the FJ, but I've learned over time that I bring a folding cot. It's just about the same size as one of those fold up beach chairs, and I have a much better night's sleep. But that weather was beautiful during the day, got cold at night. And then in the morning, when I got up about 5:30, when the sun comes up, because that's when I wake up, we started to get ready to go. And it was beautiful. We were above the clouds. You couldn't see to the ocean side. You couldn't see to the city side. You could see to the valley side. I headed on down to the men's room. And as I was heading back up, the fog rolled over us. And all of a sudden, you couldn't see 50 feet. And it got wet and it got moist. And if you've got gear out, you want to be able to cover that stuff up and make sure that your gear's not getting wet, and make a determination at that point. Like if the contest goes to 11 in the morning and it's just rolling in now at 5 o'clock, is it going to clear up enough such that it's dry enough that you're comfortable operating your gear out in the open for a couple of hours? Or is this to the time where maybe it's time to start packing some of the gear in or covering some of the gear up? I know the year before COVID, 2019, when we had our field day up at that same location, in the morning when that fog rolled in, it wasn't just fog, it was like full on drizzle. And we decided that year at 6 o'clock in the morning, it was time to pack it in. We got the tarps out, we put it all over all the radios, and we broke them down slowly but surely. And literally by the time it was about 8:30, it was raining. It was like full on raining, and not a good situation if you can't be working inside of a trailer and if you're under easy ups and stuff like that. So be prepared for those changing weather conditions. Very, very important. To the point that Dan made about the gear and about checking your stuff out ahead of time. And I know I said it a bunch of times, and I know I did a lot of that on my own. There was one item that was on my checklist ahead of time that I didn't get done, which was I had an operator that I knew was coming that wanted to work CWHF. And I knew that pretty much my radio was the only one that would be well suited for the kind of operating that he wanted to do. And I thought to myself, I have never used the automatic keyer on that radio. And I do have a paddle and I have never used it because I don't do the CW thing, but I have it so that we can use it during field day. And I said to myself, even up to the night before, even as I was loading in the car, I was like, I really should sit down with the book, and I really should get out the paddle and my dummy load and the radio and a battery, and I should figure this out so that I can make it work. And we spent about the first 20 minutes of the contest from 11 to about 11:20 trying to figure out how to make that stupid paddle work. And it was very frustrating. And Mark was walking back and forth, wanting to operate the radio, and one side would work, but the other side wouldn't. And there was a whole menu and obviously have the manual with me, had the actual paper manual with me. And in the book, it wasn't very clear that there's a whole menu there that we couldn't see on the radio. And I didn't know if it was because that was an older firmware. And then when I read it through for probably the 15th time, there was okay, push this button momentarily. And it wasn't very clear. It was like one half of a whole big long paragraph. You have to do this and this and this and that, and then push this button and then that and this and that. And I figured out that I did all those things. I pushed that button. Oh, there's the menu. Then once we saw the menu and we turned the keyer on and the keyer was working, I got out of the seat and Mark could get in there to operate. So I didn't follow my own rule about being prepared. It wasn't a huge deal, but it would have been a lot better of experience if we had been like right on top of it and been able to turn it on, plug it in. Now, I won't make that mistake next year because now I know how to push two buttons and it's in that mode so that it's working out. I think that's it. As far as lessons learned, have a good time. Don't take yourself too seriously. It's a good, fun time. We had a lot of good folks come and visit us. We had a lot of good operators. We had some good food, and most of all, it was a nice way to get out and play radio. I look forward to field day every year. I wish that in our area that this is the primary group I work with is Aries. I always hope every year that we'll do winter field day, but there isn't a lot of interest in that. I think next year, depending on what's going on, I probably will get access to that same site as long as the weather's nice. And I'll do my own impromptu winter field day and invite anybody who wants to come along to come and play because it is a great site. And as long as the weather's nice, I think we should be doing that. So I think I'll turn it over to you, Chris. Hopefully I covered all the lessons learned and then maybe a couple more.
Cool. I'm going to bring Dan back up and then bring myself back up as well. Once I find the button, there it is. So great job walking through all of your incredible field day experiences, both of you. I know, David, you showed that at the field day site, you were operating with your power structure. You were using a variety of different power. You were using, sounded like generators and battery and solar. Dan, what was your field day site using?
We were strictly on battery. We had the luxury of having a number of battle-born lithium iron phosphate, 100 amp hour. I think we had some 50 amp hour batteries that we have for the grant that we haven't deployed yet. And so we worked, to my knowledge, we were 100% off of batteries. We had generators on site, but I don't know that we ever fired them up. And if we had, it would have been to recharge batteries, but I don't think we needed to do that. I know I operated on a 100 amp hour lithium iron the entire time, and I don't think I even put a dent in what that battery is capable of.
That's amazing.
The lithium iron phosphate batteries really are amazing, and they are expensive, but when you look at you basically with a lithium iron phosphate, you can take a 50 amp hour lithium iron phosphate and probably get as much or more running time as you would off a 100 amp hour gel cell because of the power curve. And of course the number of charge discharge cycles is huge. So that's what we did, and it worked well for us. And I don't know, once we deploy all these batteries, I'm not sure what we'll do.
And we do generators. We do generators because that's our standard practice for emergency power. We can bring a lot of gas to the point where we don't worry about running out of it. You can always send somebody to get more gas, but we'll do a couple of solar panels and some smaller batteries. There are points for making a certain amount of contact in that style of natural power, whether it be solar or wind or water. If you have it, we don't have water running there such that we can run a water wheel or something like that. We bring it along and we document that, hey, these contacts we did on this type of power. It's an important part of the contest, and knowing that you can do it is there and key and critical. And Otherwise, we run those generators, and it's a good way to get out and make sure that those generators that you need just a couple times a year, or in the event of things are bad, to get them out and turn them on and have them used. The generator that I use, that I brought along, was one I just recently acquired used. And I think the guy I got it from said it hadn't been used in like 7 years, hadn't even been started, and he wasn't sure it was going to do it. And I took it and I don't know, I think I had to pull it 15 or 20 times, and I finally did get it to start. And then I took it to the Honda repair guy and said, hey, it hasn't been used in a long time. I think it would be good to have a tune up. And he's like, does it run? I'm like, yeah. He's like, if it runs, don't worry about it. I'm like, should I get a new filter or this or that? He's like, does it run? And I had the sense that he was really busy and didn't need another generator to refurb, but he also had the sense of, if it's working, it ain't broke, don't fix it. So I used it. It ran the whole time. It worked awesome. So
one of the things we've been doing with our generators is we found a couple of sources for racing gas, and it's about $10 a gallon, which used to seem like a lot of money, but it was $10 a gallon before gas prices went crazy. So now it's not as wildly expensive relatively, but because it doesn't have any ethanol in it, and I think it's 100 octane.
101.
Yeah, it runs really nicely in the generators. It lasts a long time. You don't have nearly the problems with the fuel degrading. And by the way, I got corrected. Bill corrected me. We did have one station that was operating on AC power.
Yeah, we found the station I used to get, the 101 octane gas, used to have a pump of it, and now they've gone to having in big metal cans by the gallon. And
yeah, there's one on DeSoto. I'm not sure the cross street, Van Owen, I think maybe, that it's just one of the pumps in the gas station.
Pumps, yeah, the one,
it's called Racing Fuel.
Yes,
it's 101 octane. A lot of the motorcyclists that ride through the canyon and some of the like fancy sports cars will fill up the tanks with those. And on the Chesborough off ramp of the 101, there's a 76 station. They used to have a pump of that there, and I went to go get one, and he's like, "Oh, we don't put it in there anymore. They bring it to us in they're big cylindrical, 1 gallon steel cans with a screw-on lid." Actually, some ways that's better, as long as you have a good place to store that longer term.
Yeah, the lawnmower shop that I go to, he sells that, but that's like $40 a gallon. It was really expensive.
Yeah.
Wow. Hey, what was the, I know you both of you talked about the antennas that you had set up. Do you guys have a sense or a list of what radios you operated with for field day?
You can go the kind of, I know the list.
Stations? Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't really know. You're talking about the specific models.
Yeah, what kind of models? Yeah. What did you guys end up using there?
I don't know all of them. I know there was a Kenwood, what is it, TS590 was one of them. There was a 7300 ICOM. I was running my Yaesu FT857.
Marty uses a K3. I know that.
Yeah, so K3. The VHF radios. Our 2-meter radio is a Kenwood, what is that, TMV 71, I think. I don't know. 220, I think, was a Bridgecom 220 radio. Bill's telling me in chat there was a 9700 also.
And at our site, my rig's a Yaesu FTD X3000. The other HF operator was running on a Yaesu FT 991. We had two 7300s there that we had some problem with the front end on those, and I know we've had some challenges around that in the past, where if one of them was doing FT8, nobody else, the other one wasn't functional at all. And for our UHF VHF station, there was a 991 there that they used for 2-meter and 70 centimeter FM and SSB. And he also had a Linko 220. He had a 1.2, I think it was a Linko 1.2 gigahertz radio. and there was one other radio that he had up there. Can't exactly remember what that was. It was a mix. We had an ICOM 9100. That's the UHF VHF radio before the 9700. But we actually didn't deploy it this year. That's usually what we use for satellites, but we didn't have the good satellite antenna and didn't get to use those points this year.
Nice. It sounds like you guys just had an absolutely amazing experience for field day. And I love the setup that you both talked about with really having essentially what you would use if you were deployed. It sounded like, David, you guys had the MCOM trailer that you set up and you operated with. It looked like the ACS trailer was there. It was operating as well at Dan's site. So it really was it sounded like a great experience to get out all of your gear. I love the description of going through and having people get experience on a variety of different gear that was available at the sites and asking questions and getting lots of hams, new hams, members of the public engaged with it. All that sounds like just an absolutely incredible setup there.
It was interesting because I had one of the operators that worked the 991 with John Tibbetts, and came into the trailer and looked at my FTDX 3000 and like, oh, that looks a lot more complicated. There's a lot more buttons. It's a lot bigger radio. And I was like, no, don't be afraid. Sit down and let's talk through what's there. And once we were done kind of explaining it, they were like, oh, well, this is actually easier because, on the 991, you got to push a menu and you got to figure out the band, and you want to figure out, I'm going to be on this band. I'm going to work in this mode. On my radio, there's a button for all of the different bands, and you push that button for the band and it puts it in the right mode for you. And so in some ways, learning how those other radios work makes it a lot simpler. And I know the 7300 is the same way. Hey, I want a band, hit the band button. And then you have all the list of all the bands, push the icon for the one you want. Makes it a lot easier. But if you haven't used those radios before and you haven't had the experience, it is really important to sit down. I don't think I've ever operated a 991 before, but there was a lull and some of the guys were operating my radio in the trailer, and John was taking a little break. So I sat down in front of his radio to see if I could figure it out and get it on the air and make it work. And there was really wasn't a huge learning curve, but it was definitely, I had a good appreciation for it as a good solid radio, but I also had an appreciation for contests like this. I would way rather drag my big radio out and have access to the feature and functionality that has over the smaller portable radio that I would use in other situations. I have an 897 that I use like when we have MCOM issues, like when there's like deployments, because I can do voice, I can do some HF if I need to get out of the area, as well as WinLink on that radio with a good sized battery or the generator. But ordinarily, if I'm going to do big events like Field Day or some of the other contests, dragging the FTD X3000 out is really, it's a force multiplier. Has a really good roofing filter. It is really quiet. There's really good filtering on the front end. I didn't ever hear any of the interference that the other folks were talking about from some of the other radios, even though the one radio generating the interference was literally sitting right next to me. So it was good to see that and know the capabilities.
Yeah, I like the idea of being able to have a variety of radios there to be able to work with, explore other different radios. But when push comes to shove, having your radio there that you know how to operate. I know for me, I've got several different radios. I really like to explore and experiment with different radios. But when I sit down to operate, if it's something that I really need to be able to do, I'm for the most part using my ICOM 7300. I'm using my 705. Because I know the interface of those. I'm very comfortable getting in and operating with them. When I went for a VHF mobile station, I got the Kenwood D710G because that's the radio that's deployed at all the EOCs here in the county and all the hospitals that our Ventura area supports. And so making sure that I knew how that radio operated when I got out into the field. Field day is a great experience for being able to do that. And I'm glad you were able to get that lesson learned as well. Hey, let's do a quick check on the map. If you have not sent in your WinLink check-in, go ahead and do that. And before we jump over to that, if you find the content really helpful, it would really help us out if you could go onto the YouTube channel, like the videos, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. It really helps. And leave us some comments. Let us know how your field day experience was down in the comments. And for that video, it really helps get our content shared out there. So let me go ahead and pull the guys down here real quick so we can switch over and check the map. Oh, there we go. David's helping me with that. Perfect. Switch over to this and I'll turn on the little picture in picture there. So if you haven't had a chance to send in your WinLink check-in, go ahead and do that. I'm going to do one more quick check here to make sure that we have gotten them all. I've been downloading them in the background as we've been having those. So I'll press that one more time. There we go. And now we'll bring up the map by just simply coming up here on the toolbar. I'm going to click the little globe icon. And again, you're going to select from whichever form that you've received. So in this case, I'm going to select the WinLink check-in form. But if you'd like to see how this feature works for yourself, you can, of course, come up and select messages, and it'll map all of the messages that you've got. But I'm going to come down and I'm going to select the WinLink check-in because that's what everybody just sent in, and then click the display map icon. And I'll bring that out to full screen so we can get a little bit bigger view to see where everyone is all over the world. And it looks like we've got, this looks like Terry down there in ZLN, ZL1 HOG. And let's see, we've got, looks like Franz joining us from Austria. And this looks like Roland joining us from Germany. Thanks for joining us and checking in. Let me go ahead and zoom in on North America. I'm going to right click and drag, and that allows us to pan the map by just holding down that right click button and dragging it over. There we go. Looks like we've got our friend Victor Echo 3 Yankee X-Ray joining us from Canada. And our friend WA1URS from Bangor, Maine, joining us. Great to see you there as well. This looks like Rory down there in Virginia. And we'll roll over quite a few more of these. Make sure everybody's able to see that we did receive your check-ins and see that they did come in. And station here in Kansas, KA0ZYS. Joining us from Kansas today. Hey, thanks a lot for joining us. They're in Colorado, up in looks like Ohio, up here in the Pacific Northwest. We always get quite a few in the crowd that comes in from up there joining us. Love seeing all of those contacts. Station here in Utah and in the Vegas area, also in Nevada. We're sneaking up on all 50 states here on a regular basis. Let me go ahead and zoom in a little bit tighter on Southern California, and we'll see who else we've got coming in here. There we go. And up here in Northern California, quite a few joining us from up in the Piedmont and Sacramento area. Then down here in the Long Beach area and in Los Angeles, quite a few stations always down in there. And of course, Logan joining us, KD6 LLB. So thanks a lot for joining us from all over, sending in your check-ins. We love seeing that every single week when everyone does that. And by the way, next week, check if you're signed up to receive our emails. And if you're not, go on to wavetalkers.com, scroll down to the bottom of the page, and there's a join us link. And you can sign up and you can get on our mailing list and join us live in the Zoom. So if you're here live in the Zoom, be sure to hang around for the after party. And if you are signed up, keep an eye on your email, because next week we're back and forth as to whether or not we will be able to have a show again. I'm going to be traveling, and I think the guys also have some travel. So if we can pull off a show next week, we'll definitely send out an email and let everyone know about that. If not, we'll see you another week after that. And let's bring this up. If you find the stuff helpful that we're doing, again, be sure to go on to our YouTube channel, like the video, subscribe, and leave us a comment. If you really find it helpful, then consider going on to wavetalkers.com and click on that Buy Us a Coffee link. It really helps us support the channel and keep all this infrastructure up and running. With that, let's do a quick little round robin. Dan, any final closing thoughts from you this week? It sounded like your field day site was absolutely incredible.
Yeah, it was really a great site. The fire department, the guys at Fire Station 109 were, as always, were extremely accommodating to us. It's just a really good site. It's not too far from really anybody in the city. It's up on Mulholland Drive, and that's the road along the ridge of the Hollywood Hills that separates the metropolitan LA area from the San Fernando Valley. So good location, pretty easy to get to. And it was a great event. Lessons learned, there were a few, but it was very successful. And most importantly, everybody had fun.
Nice. David, W0DHG, any closing thoughts from you this week before we wrap this up?
This is a weekend that I look forward to every year, and I'm looking forward to it coming up in 51 more weeks. I will be prepared for that one like I was prepared for this one. Again, I'm hoping to do winter field day as well. Get your gear out, test it, play with it. It doesn't do you any good just sitting on the shelf. And if you have to pull it out for an incident or emergency or something else, and you haven't had it out and you haven't played with it, it's going to be a little harder to get it working, to get it going. So get it out, test it, and play with it. Logan notes in the chat, bandpass filters. That's a lesson learned. We use that for one of our stations, and that helped out a lot. That was very useful. They're not cheap, but they are very valuable. And so yeah, get it out there, get it done, and bring your first aid kit. And everybody here, get trained on basic first aid and CPR and how to use an AED, because you never know who that person is that you might be saving.
Hey, that reminds me, somebody did ask in the chat, what is an AED? You've thrown that out there a couple of times.
Yeah, so an AED is an external electronic defibrillator. If you think back to, we're all old enough, you think back to Rescue 51 emergency, and they'd get out and they'd get out the pads and they'd rub them together and they put them on their chest and they'd yell clear. It's basically the civilian version of that. And it is a way that if someone has had a heart attack and their heart's not beating properly, that you can hook a device up that knows how to look for proper heart rhythm. And if it finds that it doesn't have proper heart rhythm, it can literally provide that shock that's needed to restart a heart and get it into proper rhythm. It has all the diagnostic information in the tool itself to know whether, hey, does it need a shock, first of all? And if it does need a shock, to tell you what to do, how to make it work. And then monitor after the shock to see if, hey, things are better, you need another shock, or you should go back to doing CPR on the individual. They aren't inexpensive, and you need to be trained on how to use them properly. You can find a class from the Red Cross or other organizations anywhere across the country. You will start to find nowadays the external defibrillators in a lot of office buildings, in a lot of retail businesses and malls and schools, at parks, airports, pretty much everywhere you go. And, I used to tell my scouts, you should be looking for the exits and the fire extinguishers, right? When you're in any location, you're at the airport, you're at the mall, you're at the supermarket, you're at your school, know where those things are. And that was something I added to the list after a while, is to know where those defibrillators are, just in case you need to use them.
I've told this story before, but it's worth repeating. Back in 2019 at the Baker to Vegas race, one of the civilian employees from my former department was running the race, and as he was approaching the end of his leg, he went down, and he was gone. And just so happened that when they were setting up the follow van, one of our retired lieutenants, captain rather, said, we ought to throw an AED in here. And they did. And that saved this guy's life. They shocked him several times on the ground. And then in the helicopter on the way to the hospital in Vegas, he was shocked at least one more time. And he's a perfect example of why these things are so important, because a couple of years later, he went back and finished that leg of the race had to get permission from his doctor, but the doctor said, not a problem. Just don't overdo it. And he went back and finished it. So definitely worth knowing how to use. Not difficult. It really does. It tells you what to do. They even has a diagram of where to put the pads. The most important thing you need to know is not to touch the person when they're being shocked. But
yeah, and nowadays all the new ones, they literally talk to you. And the first several years they talk to you. They tell you what to do. They tell you, open the unit, clear the person's chest, place the pads where the pads show, and on the pads it shows right where to put them. Push the check button. Clear. Don't touch the patient. And it'll tell you what it thinks it needs you to do. Shock the patient, continue CPR, so on and so forth. And it'll literally walk you into what needs to be done, and hopefully to restore that normal heart rhythm that it's looking for.
I think some of them even tell you to call 911.
Yeah. Well, they usually the one we have, when you open the package, that's like the first thing it literally says right there. Yeah, and they're invaluable.
Yeah,
they're
AED
really
training, CPR training, and the new one, a relatively new one, Stop the Bleed. They all are really easy skills to learn, and you might just end up saving somebody's life. And the odds are, if you do, it's going to be somebody you care about.
And adding to that whole list that you just added, would be know how to use your fire extinguisher. Get with your local fire department if you need to get some training. Know how it works. Make sure it's shaken up. Make sure it's not. Make sure it's serviceable and so forth, because we're taking a lot of power out into the field, especially as radio operators, and we're hooking up a lot of electricity. It's not hard to get in a situation, especially bringing out some of the older radios. It's a nice time to be able to get them out, test them out, make sure everything's working fine. But it is occasionally possible that that a fire could start, and you want to be able to take care of that if it does come up. So, hey, thanks a lot. I think you guys did an absolutely fantastic job going through all of those lessons learned. And so I think that'll wrap it up for this week's WaveTalkers Live. Again, check your email if you're subscribed to us, and we'll let you know if we're going to be able to do a show next week. Otherwise, we'll see you the week after that. So let's end the live stream at this point. If you're here live in the Zoom audience, hang around for the after party. So we'll say 7-3 to everyone. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
And off. There we go.